Hello and welcome to the Catholic Mama podcast. I'm your host, Christine Flynn. Thanks for joining me on this week's mini episode of Catechism Fridays. We talked about authority, the common good, what else? Human solidarity, social justice. We've gone through all this. Now we're going to move into the moral law, moral natural law, and then next time we'll talk about the old law and the law of the new covenant. So I'm going to start off. We're in paragraph 1949. Under God's salvation, law, and grace. Called to beatitude, but wounded by sin, man stands in need of salvation from God. Divine help comes to him in Christ through the law that guides him and the grace that sustains him. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for God is at work in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. That's a letter to the Philippians. All right, so under the moral law, starting in paragraph 1950. The moral law is the work of divine wisdom. Its biblical meaning can be defined as fatherly instruction. It prescribes for man the ways, the rules of conduct that lead to the promised beatitude. It prescribes the ways of evil which turn him away from God and his love. It is at once firm in its precepts and in its promises worthy of love. I'm going to stop there for just a second. If you have a great relationship with your own father, then I don't think this is very far off. You could see how something could be firm but loving. Now, if you had a traumatic relationship or no relationship with a father, this idea of a loving and firm father can feel very foreign. And for anyone who is struggling with this idea of God the Father, it seems as though there's been a lot of success in evangelizing instead through Mary. Now, it's very important to understand God as a loving father, as a just father, as one who's firm because he loves us and chastises us because he loves us. But if that is too difficult to bear, then going through Mary as a mother, a loving mother, can sometimes help open the door and lead someone who has struggled with a father figure in the past to Catholicism, or Christianity in general, and then to Catholicism. Okay, so paragraph 1951. Law is a rule of conduct enacted by competent authority for the sake of the common good. The moral law presupposes the rational order established among creatures for their good and to serve their final end by the power, wisdom, and goodness of the Creator. All law finds its first and ultimate truth in the eternal law. Law is declared and established by reason as a participation in the providence of the loving God, Creator and Redeemer of all. Such an ordinance of reason is what one calls law. Alone among all animate beings, man can boast of having been counted worthy to receive a law from God. As an animal endowed with reason, capable of understanding and discernment, he is to govern his conduct by using his freedom and reason in obedience to the one who has entrusted everything to him. That's from Tertullian. Also to note, a lot of people will say, this happen, whatever it is, homosexual acts happen in the natural world. In the animal world, we're animals too. So what's the big difference? We need to understand that there's a huge difference between a rational animal, humans, and irrational animals, the animal kingdom that we would think, it happens there. Well, a lot of other things happen in the animal kingdom that we would not want to replicate here, including incest and rape. So, it doesn't work that way. As you can hear, among all animate beings, man alone boasts of having been counted worthy to receive a law from God. So we are not the same as the animal kingdom. Okay, there are different expressions of the moral law, all of them interrelated. Eternal law, the source and God of all law; natural law, revealed law, comprising the old law and the new law, or law of the gospel; and then finally civil and ecclesiastical laws. The moral law finds its fullness and its unity in Christ. Jesus Christ is in person the way of perfection. He is the end of the law, for only he teaches and bestows the justice of God. For Christ is the end of the law, that everyone who has faith may be justified. Okay, moving into the natural moral law, and we'll finish up here today, paragraph 1954 to 1960. Man participates in the wisdom and goodness of the Creator, who gives him mastery over his acts and the ability to govern himself with a view to the true and the good. The natural law expresses the original moral sense, which enables man to discern by reason the good and the evil, the truth and the lie. The natural law is written and engraved in the soul of each and every man, because it is human reason ordaining him to do good and forbidding him to sin. But this command of human reason would not have the force of law if it were not the voice and interpreter of a higher reason to which our spirit and our freedom must be submitted. Paragraph 1955. The divine and natural law shows man the way to follow so as to practice the good and attain his end. The natural law states the first and essential precepts which govern the moral life. It hinges upon the desire for God and submission to him, who is the source and judge of all that is good, as well as upon the sense that the other is one's equal. Its principal precepts are expressed in the Decalogue. This law is called natural, not to reference to the nature of irrational beings, but because reason which decrees it properly belongs to human nature. So natural as in human nature, not natural as animal kingdom, Mother Earth, all that kind of stuff. But where then are these rules written, if not in the book of that light we call the truth? In it is written every just law. From it the law passes into the heart of the man who does justice. Not that it migrates into it, but that it places its imprint on it, like a seal on a ring that passes onto wax without leaving the ring. The natural law is nothing other than the light of understanding placed in us by God. Through it, we know what we must do and what we must avoid. God has given this light or law at the creation. That's from St. Thomas Aquinas. Application of the natural law varies greatly. It can demand reflection that takes account of various conditions of life according to places, times, and circumstances. Nevertheless, in the diversity of cultures, the natural law remains as a rule that binds men among themselves and imposes on them beyond the inevitable differences common principles. C.S. Lewis wrote about this in Mere Christianity, that there has never been a culture that honors cowardice. Okay, so or you could say, oh, well, some cultures allowed for the killing of their neighbor. Well, that's actually not true. It's just that different cultures had different definitions of what a neighbor was. Nazi Germany, the Nazis did not view anybody other than the Aryans as a neighbor unto themselves. So it released them of their feelings that they were morally wrong to murder all of these people. So it's just a misunderstanding or a different definition of what, say, neighbor is or what bravery might be and who it applies to. But in general, these values are imprinted on the hearts of man throughout time, place, and culture. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, in paragraph 1958, the natural law is immutable and permanent through the variations of history. Oh, okay, that sounds better than what I just said. Of course it is. It's the Catechism. It subsists under the flux of ideas and customs and supports their progress. The rules that express it remain substantially valid. Even when it is rejected in its very principles, it cannot be destroyed or removed from the heart of man. It always rises again in the life of individuals and society. St. Augustine wrote, "Theft is surely punished by your law, O Lord, and by the law that is written in the human heart, the law that iniquity itself does not efface." 1959, the natural law, the Creator's very good work, provides a solid foundation on which man can build the structure of moral rules to guide his choices. It also provides the indispensable moral foundation for building the human community. Finally, it provides the necessary basis for the civil law with which it is connected, whether by a reflection that draws conclusions from its principles or by additions of a positive and juridical nature. And finally, in paragraph 1960, the precepts of natural law are not perceived by everyone clearly and immediately. In the present situation, sinful man needs grace and revelation so moral and religious truths may be known by everyone with facility, with firm certainty, and with no admixture of error. The natural law provides a revealed law and grace with a foundation prepared by God and in accordance with the work of the Spirit. Right, so we have this natural law that's right and wrong, justice and mercy written on our hearts. Do we always act it? No, we don't. There's sin. Some people may not actually know or be able to act on the natural law that is within them simply because sin has clouded their judgment and the right reason. The more that someone is embedded in sin, the harder it's a fog, and they can't get out of it and can't see clearly and see God's will for them as clearly. So it's not that the law isn't written on their hearts, it's just that there's such a thick layer of sin stopping them, right? I think it was St. Teresa of Avila in Interior Castles or the Mansions, where she talks about, for somebody who's outside of the mansion at all, there is the moat. There's these horrible beasts that keep them from trying to get into the mansion itself. Now, once you get in there, you're safe from those beasts for the most part, but there's other difficulties. But if, at that first part, if you have somebody who's really steeped in sin, it becomes incredibly difficult to get past the moat and the beasts that are trying to devour that person, the sins, right? So, okay, I hope that makes sense. We will start back next time with paragraph. Let me just skip forward here on my phone. It timed out. 1961. We're going to talk about the old law and we'll talk about the new law as well. And if you don't want to miss these episodes, please subscribe wherever you are watching. And if you're on YouTube, hit that like button, leave a comment. I'm so glad you're here. All right, everyone. Until next time.